The Australian Open 2024 begins the calendar. For sports fanatics as tennis stars across the world take on each other at the Happy Slam to stamp their authority. These elites are ready to bring on the heat, and who knows it better than Ana Ivanovic? A Roland Garros champion, former world number 1, Australian Open runner-up, and an icon of the sporting universe, she has seen the peaks of tennis achievements with over $15 million in career earnings. She still remains people's favorite as the UNICEF brand ambassador of Serbia, a social worker, a successful entrepreneur, a supermom, and the tennis queen. Being a role model to millions of working moms out there, Ana Ivanovic welcomes her third child into her family. Begin the 2024 tennis season with us as she gears up to share some exciting insights about the world of sports and her life after tennis. Join us as on ES Fancast, we sit down with the great to discuss the upcoming Australian Open, her inspiring on-court journey, off-court responsibilities, stardom, and much more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of ES Fancast Live. Today we have a very special guest with us. She has reached the pinnacle of the sport of tennis. She's won 15 WTA titles. She's won a Grand Slam title. She's amassed $15 million in total prize money in her career, and she's used it for good as an entrepreneur, a mom, and a humanitarian. We're proud to welcome to the show none other than the wonderful Ana Ivanovic. Ana, we were talking so much before this interview about all the tennis, but how much have you gotten to enjoy from the Australian Open? It's been quite a wild show so far from Melbourne.
Yes, it's been really interesting matches last few days, and many young girls coming through with the big wins, especially on a Grand Slam. I mean, it's the first Grand Slam of the season, so players are starting to get into it, but it's great to see new faces, and especially very young ones. But of course, some solid wins from Sabalenka and Iga Swiatek, so that's also good to see.
Yeah, I have to ask you right off the bat, because you mentioned Swiatek. She played tonight. We were talking before we went on air about that incredible tiebreak, the longest tiebreak in Grand Slam history on the women's side, deciding breaker that went, I think, 22-20 at the end, and Elena Rybakina upset by Anna Blinkova, which, you know, maybe there was a little bit of history there with them from the same country. That can always be weird, but I mean, just absolutely insane scenes. And you were lucky enough to be awake to see it. I was as well. What a match. I mean, what were your immediate takeaways there from that fight that we saw with Blinkova?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I missed the first two sets, but I got the best part, I guess. I was really surprised how aggressive Anna played, really holding her court and not getting down. She had so many chances to go double break in a third set, and she missed those. Then she missed some early on match points, and then went to really play a thriller of the tie break. I was on my tippy toes for the half an hour that they were playing. And it's really incredible. It was great to see that she could keep her composure. And like you said, on 17-16, there was this point where Rybakina was match point up and so in control of the whole point. She just somehow managed to get balls back and ending up winning that point and then finally winning the match. But it's great to see this kind of thrillers in women's tennis.
Can you remember any tie breaks you were in like that, where your legs were so heavy that your opponent hits a drop shot late and you have to chase after it? I mean, what is that like to be in a moment like that, especially in a final set breaker, to just what are your feelings? Like, it just seems like a physical war out there. Whoever's the fittest wins.
Absolutely. And when you get to that point, it's just so much on automatic, because your body, your mind, you're exhausted, and it's just about relying on that physical preparation and just giving everything you have in a tank. And so many movements are just like literally just responses, very automatic. I played one of my longest matches actually in Australian Open, 12-10 in a third set, because at that time there was no tie break. So we played on a game difference, and I remember it was over 3 hours.
Well, I mean, they love to brag, the Aussies. Well, they like to brag about a lot of things, but they do like to brag that they invented the super breaker, the 10-point breaker. What are your thoughts about the changes that we've seen in that so far with, you know, obviously every tournament had their own deal, and now everyone's adopted the 10-point breaker. It does feel like it's been a lot more exciting for Grand Slam tennis that we've had this to end these matches. It is fun, obviously, you know, the Isner Mahut match, of course, everyone talks about, and, you know, there's been plenty of battles, Djokovic and Federer, the Wimbledon final, but do you like the 10-point breaker as the way to end a match?
I think it's a good way. US Open had it while I still played, and the other Grand Slams they played on a game difference. And I think it's much better to do the tie break because, like you said, if we take in consideration Isner Mahut match that went on for 3-4 days, you don't want to have this to be scheduled just after them and having to wait on. And I think this is much more excited, and it kind of puts like goal, like the end to it, rather than thinking, oh my God, this can just go forever.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, honestly, though, sometimes it doesn't feel like that because we've seen even in the last few years, players forget what the score is. I saw even in a 7-point tiebreaker last night or 2 nights ago, Lorenzo Sonego twice think that they were changing sides at 4-0 and 5-0, which is nuts. But I guess like, yeah, that is adding so much excitement. Before we get into the because you mentioned your Australian Open history, I do want to talk about that. But to put a bow on it, who have you been most impressed with, or maybe what's been your favorite match that you've been able to see? Because obviously we know if you're not enjoying the summer in Australia, the time difference is very difficult. But have you been able to see and be impressed by anyone?
Just to come back to the tie break thing, I think it was last year at the Australian Open. I think it was Sabalenka who thought that she won it when it was like 7, and she forgot that
It was
it went till
actually
10.
yeah, that was the U.S. Open last year
US
when
Open,
I was
yeah.
there, and she went to her box. She was so embarrassed. That's got to be such an embarrassing moment, right?
Exactly, and it can really be like put you off, but it was really good because she kept composed and she ended up winning, which is great. But like you said, it's been a little bit more difficult to follow. I watched some matches in Brisbane too, and I mean, Sabalenka is playing really well. I like her style, I like her aggression, and of course, Rybakina, she was also one of my favorites because she has big serve, and she doesn't seem like she's moving well, but she does move well. She covers the court quite well, still very powerful, holds her position. But of course, she lost today. But other than that, of course, Iga, she's mentally so tough. I think she's of course she's also in a new position year after year, having to defend, let's say, the number one position and defending Grand Slams. It's a different challenge. It's a different perspective as well going into the Grand Slam. So I think she has different kind of pressure than a few years ago, or than maybe Sabalenka or Rybakina. But they are the ones that I've been kind of watching a little bit.
Well, I don't want to ask you too hard of a question, but I do want to throw this out there. You're not allowed to say Coco Gauff, Aryna Sabalenka, or Iga Swiatek. Who do you think is a real contender to win this tournament? And do you feel like it's going to be one of those three now with Rybakina out, or will it be one, player? Maybe I like Helena Ostapenko, maybe that she's playing well, but someone who maybe we're surprised by, maybe Mira Andreeva.
You know what? I haven't watched Mira's whole matches. I haven't seen how she's been playing. I saw bits and pieces, and it's amazing. I think she has a really bright future, and it's great to see young players going on and challenging the top players as well. Ostapenko as well. Like I told you before we spoke, I haven't seen her play lately, but I know she's been having better results, and she has very powerful game that can bring more Grand Slams, obviously. I also like Svitolina. I know she's been away from the game a little bit. She had a great Wimbledon last year. She has experience. She now has also become a mother, and but she seems very focused, and she's been playing quite well, I must say. Coco, on the other hand, she improved a lot. I've seen her play the final of French Open a few years back live, and great mover, really, really great mover. I feel like her forehand is much better. She's been improving a lot. And again, super young, super bright future. Again, I like Sabalenka. I think she's very confident at the moment, and she has a strong game. So if I would have to pick one, maybe I would go with her. Again, I'm kind of putting a little bit like distance because I haven't seen some other players still playing. But she's been my favorite, let's say.
All right, that's good to know. I'm also very jealous that you've been to. I've never been to Roland Garros. I imagine that is just such a beautiful, especially when you remove all the pressure from playing at the tournament. It's got to be one of the most beautiful spectacles in sport to go watch a match there.
Absolutely. And for me, it's super special. I love playing on clay. I feel like it was almost an art, sliding and moving around the clay courts. For me, I grew up playing on clay. So for me, that's a very special kind of game as well. So watching it live, and it's such a different feeling being on court and watching it from the stands as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, it's just a beautiful, it's just a beautiful, display of the game, really. I mean, you mentioned the pristine clay, the sliding, the crafty shot making, shaping your shots. It's great. I think we could talk for an hour, by the way, about the current game and the Australian Open. I'll see if we can get back to it, but I do want to talk about your Australian Open history because, obviously you've had a great triumph there. Before we talk about '08, though, defeating Serena Williams in 2014. I'm curious, like before that match, because I think, I've never played at the Grand Slam level or even at any sort of professional level, but it seems as if having a mindset that you can defeat a player that is as great as Serena Williams or Novak Djokovic or, a Rafa Nadal, it seems like you got to have that belief in order to actually get across the finish line. So going into that match in the locker room, like where was your mind at? Were you really, do you have to almost be like arrogant that like, she's just another player, I can beat her? Like, what were you thinking?
To be honest, I always try to focus on my own game. So to focus on my confidence. And when you have confidence in your own game, sometimes it doesn't really affect who you play. Of course, when you play a big players, there is much more maybe tension or nerves or so on. And of course, you enjoy it more because you play on a bigger courts and it's much more at stake. So at that Australian Open, I came after winning Auckland. So I had a lot of confidence coming into the Grand Slam. And I played Serena a few times before, and she can be very intimidating to play against. Like huge serve, great shots, and she covers the court so quickly. So I just knew I had to play my best. And of course, I was really happy the way I played basically the whole match. But as a tennis player, you live for those moments. You live to play against top players and on a Grand Slam, especially.
I mean, she is probably one of the toughest and obviously left it all out there on the court, came back after having a child, a lot that she accomplished, with all the Grand Slams that she won. Do you feel like at that point in her career, what was it, 2 years ago now when she retired, did you feel like that was the right time for her to step away?
I think so. I mean, she probably knows the best, but she's given so much to the sport, and she has records that I think I don't see it being broken anytime soon. Really, she dominated the game. She inspired so many people to play and to compete, and she was I think she gave it all, like you said.
Well, I mean, someone who may come for that title, and when you factor in Margaret Court and Serena Williams, of course, is someone who you're very close to, Novak Djokovic. I wanted to ask a few questions about really what his makeup is, because I think that sort of adds to the mystique of him, is that no one really knows what he's ever thinking out there on the court, or how he finds this motivation. But the good folks here at the ES Fancast wanted me to throw in a little sneaky question: if you might play mixed doubles with Novak at the Olympics this year.
Oh, I wish, but I haven't really practiced. But I would love to. I would love to play. I might play some exhibitions at the end of the year. So I'm slowly starting to go back to the gym and to train a little bit. And I mean that would be really nice. But I don't know if that's really possible, though.
I mean, it seems like a lot to get back into shape, especially, there's always so much talk about just having matches. It's just, there's a lot, the speed of the ball coming at you, whatever. So, but you're a professional and you won a Grand Slam, so I'm not going to tell you about tennis. Of course, that's what you're here for. I wanted to ask you if you actually saw. I mean, Novak has gotten into it with the fans like pretty much every time he plays, or at least anytime he thinks there might be a chance that he loses. Did you see the other night in on center court there against Alexei Popyrin when he was giving it to the fan and he was saying, "What? Come say it to my face."
Oh, okay. I've seen it the next day. I've seen it in a press, but no, I haven't. I haven't watched it live. Sometimes, and I must say this: if I go back to when we started to play, like Jelena, Novak, Tipsarevic, and myself, and in 2006-7, when we were making a big breakthrough coming from Serbia, we had amazing support. And sometimes the fans would be even loud during the points because they were so excited. Finally they had someone from Serbia, and they've been probably living wherever we played. And sometimes they would make comments even during the points, which opponents would find it very annoying, which I understand, being on the let's say the good side. So it can be sometimes frustrating when you play a match and someone is throwing you the comments. Sometimes maybe Novak uses it as energy, you know. Sometimes it helps him to get like a little bit more upset, to get a little bit more pumped up, so that he plays even better after that, I think.
Yo, it definitely feels like that. I mean, that's sort of been the prevailing narrative over the last couple of years, that like he does use that as fuel and it almost makes him better. But I mean, I'm curious, because you've known him since you're 4 years old, for the people that may not know that. Like, I'm curious, you know, the question that everyone always asks is, why is he still so motivated at this age to continue to be better? And, you know, yes, sometimes he'll use the fans as motivation. You could maybe make the argument that the new generation, he wants to beat them. But, you know, we've seen here in America, like Tom Brady, you know, every great player eventually, they feel like they've accomplished all there is to accomplish. And, you know, they sort of just ride off into the sunset. Why is it that he continues to be so adamant about achieving more in the game of tennis after, you know, pretty much over the last 5 years? He's not only entered the debate about being the greatest, but he's sort of ended it because of all these titles he's won over the last few years. Why does he still, you know, compete at the highest level and strive for more?
I mean, of course, the best would be to probably ask him, but I can imagine that he's going for Golden Slam. This year, with Olympic year, he probably wants to try to go for a Grand Slams and Olympic medal. I think Olympic medal is the only thing he's still missing, that he's probably is driven to achieve and to win, I guess. But also maybe he just wants to get more and more Grand Slams so people can reach him harder in the future, if there is someone who comes up in I don't know how many years who can win as many Grand Slams. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I always like to say that when people were talking about Carlos Alcaraz and, oh, who's going to be his rival? You know, is it Sinner? And I was like, it's probably some kid who's 12 years old right now. You know what I mean? That's sort of how
Exactly.
tennis works, is they just kind of pop up. But, you know, it's just, speaking of Novak, I mean, what was he like as a kid? Because I always like to say he's just the biggest troll, if you're familiar with that term. He just loves to have
Yes, yes,
fun,
yeah.
whether it's with the crowd or, you know, just it feels like he is, you know, earned that name, the Joker. I mean, what was he like? Was he always cracking jokes? What was he always making these weird faces that he likes to make, like we saw last night? I mean, what was he like?
Yes, and even more so, he was really like a joker, and he always tried to make fun. And actually, whenever we played together, and in Perth we played the Hoffman Cup together at that time, and he always used to try to embarrass me because I was quite shy, and he would try to get me to dance on a court, and so he really always tried to make funny things and imitate people. So yeah, he's always been like that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely, as I mentioned, it's, you know, it's added to his image. And, you know, I think that he has joined the big three in such a great way. And, you know, speaking of, Roger Federer did retire at the Laver Cup. Obviously, it was a very emotional scene a year ago. I was curious if you got to watch that, you know, and what you thought about that ending to his career. That was, it was really tough for pretty much anyone who was watching to see him cry like that.
Absolutely. I was not there live, but I did watch it and follow it. And it's very emotional, you know, when a legend like him, like Serena, and I even remember Andre Agassi. I was at the US Open the time he played his last match there. So all these top players and great players, when they end their careers, it's super emotional. So of course, Roger had a really super amazing career that anyone could dream of.
Yeah, I mean, what do you feel like his greatest, as I look at this art that I bought of Roger Federer actually on my wall, what do you feel like his legacy is on the game of tennis? I mean, how did he change the way that maybe the game is played? And what will people really remember him most by?
I mean, the first thing I think when you think of Roger is elegance. You know, he not only won all this, but it seems like he did everything without even sweating. You know, he just played so gracefully, you know, and of course, winning all the Grand Slams and all the tournaments and being number one for so long. Of course, people are going to remember that. But just he had that elegant demeanor about him.
Yeah, I mean, he had that elegance. You know, I think a lot of people hit one-handed backhands because of him. He left a great mark on the game. But, you know, we shouldn't go, you know, I'd be remiss if I say you didn't leave a good mark on the game as well, winning the '08 Australian Open, or going, excuse me, to the finals of the '08 Australian Open. I'm so sorry. And losing to Maria Sharapova there. But what like is the biggest difference between, you know, even a WTA 1000 final and a Grand Slam final. What is the difference in the atmosphere? And like, is it one of those atmospheres where you just almost don't even hear anything? You're just like so focused, or are you really sort of lifted by the emotions inside, center court at one of these big stadiums?
I must say it's a big difference, really. On a Grand Slam final, you can almost cut with the knife the tension in the air and the atmosphere, and of course it's much bigger stage and it really shows. I mean, winning 1,000, it's a huge success, but Grand Slam, it's completely different level. And especially the Grand Slams like Wimbledon, where you really feel the atmosphere. I remember playing semi-final there against Venus in 2007, and you're bouncing the ball, and you can hear the ball bounce. Like you can't hear a fly in the audience. So it's definitely completely different atmosphere.
I want to ask you, because you bring up the atmosphere, I want to ask you before we move on to, some other topics, like what was the best stadium I think that you competed in? Like what would be your favorite venue that you ever played a match in? And then what crowd would you say was the rowdiest of all the crowds you've had to play in front of in all the countries in the world?
I mean, of course, I won French Open, so playing in Philippe Chatrier, it's for me a dream. I loved competing in Australia, but night sessions at US Open are something very, very unique. And I played amazing match with Sloane Stevens. I don't remember if it was 2012 or 13, and we had really, I think it was 12 actually, and we had a really great match, 3-set match, a night session, and it was really pure joy to play.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a fun time there. Especially when it gets late at night, people are just, for better or for worse, just yelling out during points, and it's a wild atmosphere. It's a zoo, as some would say. But I want to move on to, just a little bit about the WTA Tour in general, or just playing tennis on that side of things. You've said before that there's a lot more pressure to play on the WTA Tour and to continue to be on top. Is that maybe the reason why there's a lot of turnover in the top 10 year over year? And, even, just a few hours ago, actually, Danielle Collins said in her press that she's going to retire after this year. And there seems to be like, the length of a career seems to be a little bit shorter on the WTA Tour. So why do you think that is?
I mean, it's very hard to say, because if you go back to the times of Martina Hingis and even Justina Nan, like they all retired at the age of 26, 27, which now it's considered still super young. So we went through era where the players were playing almost to 40, and now again maybe a little bit younger. So there is a lot of pressure, especially I think on the women's side, because we're just built differently than men, and I think naturally we are more emotional. We maybe analyze things differently, we view things differently, which is absolutely fine and normal. But being constantly in the spotlight, especially at young age and for so many years, it does take a toll. And don't forget, it's individual sport, so we spend a lot of time alone in a hotel room, doing room service, traveling alone, and not everyone is lucky to have amazing team with them or to travel with the families and friends. This you don't really see on a tennis tour. Maybe in men, maybe some women, but in my experience, not as much. And of course, after being so many years in a spotlight, and now last few years with social media, I think it creates extra pressure that maybe I didn't have, like especially looking back to 2008, we had no social media. So now everything is instant, everything is constant, and I think it creates a lot of tough emotions.
I mean, did it help at all to have friends that toured around the world with you? I mean, obviously, I know everyone sort of picks their own schedule, but did you have some people who, you sort of played at the same tournaments as throughout the year that you were friends with? And how vital is it or how hard is it even to make friends in the locker room when you guys are playing different tournaments every week and people are out with injuries and taking, different routes throughout a season?
Yeah, I had some friends, and that really helps, because you see players constantly, and of course with some you're closer, with others not so much. But it was nice to see your friends and to kind of get your mind off maybe the stress of the tournament or the stress of traveling, or being in a good form or being in not good form, so on. So it definitely helped. I mean, I heard, was it yesterday when Ruud said that, yeah, now I'm going to think about my interior design, of my house. And it it sounds weird, but it helps. It's really nice to have something where you can switch off, because it's, at least for me personally, always was super hard to switch off, to make that separation. Okay, now I'm training, practicing, playing. Now I have different life. I will read, I will go out for walks. No, for me it was a lot about tennis constantly. So it's nice to have that like outlet.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what your outlet was, but it's just reading and hanging out, or like what do you do watercolor painting? I mean, what were some of the
I
things that would
can't
take you
paint.
off?
No, I can't
You
paint, but
can't? That makes two
I
of us.
loved reading. I love reading. Of course, I enjoy going for shopping or walking. But again, like, you had to be super careful, because I remember, it might sound silly, but on a day off, it's like you don't really want to go to the beach or something, because it takes so much energy and you need energy to recover. So it was mostly like, okay, don't go outside. It's too hot. Stay in, recover, read a book, watch a movie. So it's like, oh my God, but I want to go out.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta, especially when you're visiting all these amazing, not only cities, but climates. You're going to the summer and these beautiful places. It must be hard to abstain from even just going out to dinner if that's not something you think you have the energy to do. So I completely understand that. I mean, obviously one thing that maybe people can focus on, if they are lucky enough to be a mother, and you are a mother, is, maybe their family. I mean, we've seen a lot of moms are coming back this year on the WTA tour. How difficult is that to have a child and start a family, or continue with your family, and then come back to the profession and just snap back in and be laser focused on tennis? I mean, how hard is that? And do you feel like players sort of their priorities change after, the birth of a child?
Absolutely. I think it gives you such a different perspective. All of a sudden, it's not you who is most important. That's also something that I guess changes, and it makes you tougher, because it puts things in perspective. As a player, as a tennis player, you just think every match, every point is the biggest event of your life, and then all of a sudden you have something else that you realize it's much bigger. And I think traveling and being a full-time mom and full-time tennis player, I think it's super hard. I think you have to make some selection. I mean, I have, my kids are 6, 4.5, and 8 months. I still don't sleep. None of them still sleep. So I'm like between rooms at night. I cannot even imagine training like that. So of course, if you have a young child, you need to have help, someone who can take care of the child while you can rest and recover, because it takes a lot of energy, training, playing, and traveling as well. So it is very challenging and quite demanding. So of course, it would mean that they need to have a lot of help.
Do you get to play any tennis with them yet, or are they not old enough to move around out there on the court and hold a racket?
To be honest, they are not really into tennis. Sometimes they play a little bit, especially the middle one. But the middle one really likes football. He likes sport in general, but he's more football, basketball, but not so much tennis, which I'm absolutely fine with. I play a little bit with my husband, and that's okay.
Well, I mean, speaking of football, and I use the Flash Score app here, so I do actually kind of call it football, believe it or not. Bastian
Okay.
Schweinsteiger and you, obviously, you guys are big supporters of each other. I'm curious how you guys ended up meeting as high profile athletes, because I always wonder how that sort of happens with, I mean, obviously today, you mentioned social media is around, people can just DM each other and get to know each other that way. But like, what was that? How did that really come about? What was that like? And how hard is it for a professional athlete, to sort of meet somebody?
Actually, we met in New York. We met in New York through Angelique Kerber. So she's a good friend of mine, and her coach was friends with Basti, and that's how we met, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I believe he was on record as saying he was incredibly nervous to meet you, and I mean, obviously, that goes without saying. That definitely must have been a very intimidating experience.
Oh, it was really nice, and to be honest, I didn't really follow football or soccer very much. So no, but he was, yeah, it was really, really, really nice. It worked out. We have 3 kids later, but no, he's a really nice person.
It also says here in notes that apparently the Hollywood cult film Notting Hill was the inspiration for his proposal. I mean, what can
I
you
don't
take us
know
through
who.
what the proposal was like?
No, I don't know even who said that. Just because it was in a garden in London, I think they put the parallel with Notting Hill. It sounds very romantic. It was romantic, yes.
Well, I want to go back to something you said about having children and them not liking tennis because look, there's a lot of tennis players these days. They have their parents in their box. There are second generation players here in the United States. Obviously, Sebastian Korda, but you can look at Stefanos Tsitsipas, Casper Ruud. I mean, from your view, just from the outside, what do you feel like that pressure must be like for players who are playing with either their parents as their coaches or just as the descendant of a player? It feels to me as an outsider like it's got to be a lot of pressure, and almost I almost like hope for the player that they weren't forced into playing tennis by their parents and that they chose the profession by themselves. But I mean, what must that be like?
I hope so too. I really hope so too. I mean, I can tell you from the parent perspective, if I think of my child doing any sport professional, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know how my parents managed to watch me play. I think it's super hard being a spectator. It's much easier playing. This is the first thing for sure. And as a player, like you say, if that's your path, if that's your passion, and you chose it, I think it's important to encourage that everyone has their own path. They might be better, they might not be better, but the end of the day doesn't really matter. What matters is that the child is happy and that they follow their passion and their dreams.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely number one. And but I mean, it obviously must be helpful to have that sort of guidance. I mean, you look at any player who's had a mentor, who's played before, whether it's a parent or not. I mean, there's certainly. I mean, are there helpful tips that they can pass down, to the next generation?
Absolutely, yes, of course. There is a lot of benefits and especially on emotional side, because I think if you take tennis even 10 years ago to now, technology improved so much. So all the rackets, all the strings, they compensate so much for what player might be lacking in terms of like power or spin or slice. So racket and strings now compensate all that. Fitness, everyone works hard, that's no question. So the biggest difference is the mental part, and you can see that you can see that with Iga, for example, she's super mentally tough, with Novak in particular. So of course, if the child or the player has a benefit of having experience of someone who's been through the situations and matches, it's definitely a benefit.
Well, you mentioned Novak, and one of the stories that I actually was pretty captivated by, I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but there's a young Serbian kid by the name of Hamad Medjedovic. Sorry, I've been up all night watching tennis. Hamad Medjedovic, he won the Next Gen Finals. He's an unbelievable tennis player, but from my understanding, that Novak actually helped not only fund his career and mentor him, but apparently with housing as well. I mean, how much of a generous gift is that to have Novak Djokovic mentor you, and just what does that say? Do you think about him, and how lucky do you feel like you would be to have something like that set up for you at a young age?
Oh yeah, that's incredible, and to have someone like Novak be behind you and support you, that's definitely very helpful. I mean, it might put a little more pressure on him, but I think it's amazing to have that kind of support. When I was a young girl, and even Novak, our tennis knowledge in Serbia was not really present. So of course we had to pave the path by ourselves in our own ways. But to have someone like Novak lead the way, it's amazing.
I actually did want to ask you about, being with Novak in Serbia before we move on here, because you spent some time in Switzerland as well. I'm curious the comparison between, because I know Novak is just, I mean, beloved is not even the word to describe it in Serbia. It seems like the people love him, but like, what was the difference between how the Swiss loved Roger and the Serbians loved Novak? I mean, how did that compare? And what is the support like for Novak in Serbia? It seems unfathomable.
Yeah, no, it's incredible, of course. And also you have to think about the different countries and different mentalities in a way. And Serbians are very passionate, very emotional. So of course everything is magnified. Everything is even bigger. And of course he's really like the king of the country.
Now, we did mention, some philanthropy. You are a very philanthropic person. You're also a pioneer for women empowerment and entrepreneur. So your legacy extends well beyond the tennis court. But you launched a skincare line, Ana Ivanovic Natural Performance. How did you get into skincare? I mean, what spurred you to enter that field, and what are some of your goals you'd like to accomplish?
Well, for me, of course, taking care of myself became maybe even more important as I grew older, and I understand the importance of being organic and living sustainable. So for me, I always look for something that I can use and that works as well. So in a search of something like that, I decided to create my own line, which is sustainable and also very organic. So at the moment, we are in a Serbian market, and people love the product, and I love them too. So it's very exciting to put your dreams kind of in reality. So I do that, but I also do, like you say, a lot of work with UNICEF as well, because the working with kids is my passion. So I try to do a lot of charity work as well.
I mean, how important is it to someone to have that sort of guidance, and Serbia as well is a country where you've done a lot. I mean, what spurred you on to enter that philanthropic field in Serbia and help those people?
That was my dream always. So I became part of UNICEF in 2007 already. So I did a lot of projects with them. And like I said, for me, always the priorities were kids. So we did different programs. First was the School Without Violence. Then we did the neonatology. Then we do part where there is some children that are hindered in development. So we try to just bring awareness of how important is to live in a unity as well, and that we are all one. So to make every child feel safe and loved, and that they have staying in their own future.
Well, it's very, very, it's honestly admirable what you've done. So, I'm sure many people around the world thank you for that. And, now I would like to get onto some of our, our poll questions, our fan questions. Before we get to that, wanted to ask about, as a top tennis star, maybe some of the favorite celebrities that you've had the pleasure to meet. I think you've met Donald Trump before. What were some of the experiences, being at the top of the women's game and meeting some of these stars? Were you ever starstruck around anybody like that?
Actually, I was once. I was once, and it was when I met Kate Blanchett. She's so beautiful, and I remember I saw her in Dubai, and all I could say is like, I love Australia. I was like, what was that? So it was really funny. But she's so beautiful. So that was the only time I think I was starstruck.
Well, I'm actually glad you brought up an actress, because one of our poll questions here is, which movie would Ana Ivanovic act in if given the chance? Would it be a sports documentary, an action movie, or a drama movie? What do you think?
Okay, that's a good question. My husband would say drama. I can cry like this. But probably action, I guess.
Well, speaking of Bastian, another question here to ask is, who is the more stricter of the two parents? Who's the
Me.
easygoing one, the pushover, and who's the strict one? Or are
I'm the
neither of you guys
strict.
strict?
No, I'm the
Yeah?
strict one. Yes, I'm the strict one. He's definitely more the fun parent.
Well, yeah, I mean, every that seems to be a very common dynamic of parenting. So yeah, my mother was the pushover, so I love her for that. All right, now the time to get to some fan questions. We have one that we're gonna tee up here. It's a video question, but a fan here wants to ask, what match of your career were you fully satisfied with, that you feel like you played almost a perfect match, you wouldn't change anything? We're gonna go ahead and play it right now, and then we'll get your answer after we play it.
Hi Anna, I'm Lee, and I'm very happy to be chosen to ask you a question. So I wonder, during your career, which match was you most satisfied with the levels you play at? It doesn't necessarily have to be a final or in some big tournament, just any match. The one that you feel like you did everything right and didn't want to change anything if you can go back and play it again. That's my question.
So
Thank you.
what match was it for you?
Hi, Anna. I'm Lee.
For
So
me,
what match was it for you?
the match that I think I played the perfect match was the semi-final of a French Open in 2007 against Sharapova. I think we played match under an hour, and it was really a perfect match. Nothing I would change.
Do you get bored after a match like that? Where you just like, I wish it was a little harder for me. I had to work a little harder.
No, you just wish you could play another match right then.
Well, I mean, maybe that's why so many people play doubles. Who knows? But all right. So we have another question here from a fan, and it is: how hard is professional tennis on your body? How do you cope with the physicality of the sport and take care of yourself and manage that?
It's very hard, you know. I always say that sport is super healthy, professional sports are not so much because it takes such a toll on your joints, on knees, on shoulders, and you play most of the time on a hard court, which is super high impact on the body. Well, in 2015, I broke my toe, and after that has been super hard. I started to have a knee pain because the bone didn't heal properly, and then you change a little bit movement, then it goes to your knee, to your hip, and it's quite challenging. So it's super important to do recovery every day, to do different kinds of treatments, massages, cold plunge. Of course, now technology is improving, so they constantly have something new, which maybe I'm not up to date, but this is how we used to recover.
It seems like there is so much new technology. That's why all these
So
athletes
much,
are able to
yes.
play so long. It's crazy. All right. So we got a few rapid fire or just fun questions here. One celebrity, actor, or actress you would like to play tennis with?
Jessica Alba.
Now, would you play singles against her, or would you play on a doubles team with her?
Doubles team with her. Because I want to
Okay.
chat.
That does feel like a very fun part of playing doubles. What's your favorite vacation destination?
Oof. Greece.
Greece. Why is that?
I don't know. As I was a child, I always used to go with my family to Greece. And the last few years, we've been going back to Greece for holidays, and it's just so beautiful. I love the lifestyle. I love the energy, the food, the people. I don't know. I just feel super comfortable there.
Well, what is Greek food your favorite food, or what is your favorite food? What's your
Not
favorite cuisine?
necessarily, not necessarily favorite. I love Asian fusion, so I like sushi, I like fish, so I do like Mediterranean, let's say, diets.
All right, all right. There's one down the street from me. Maybe I'm overdue for a visit. Two more in the GOAT section here. Your favorite between Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo?
I told you I'm not a big football, but I'm gonna go with Messi.
Okay, okay. And your favorite tennis player? I think this is a pretty easy one, but Roger Federer or Novak Djokovic?
I mean, I have to go with my countryman. You put me on a spot there.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's done so much for the country as well. Davis. Answer. All right. Well, this was so fun, Anna, and I'm so happy that we got to talk a little bit about the Australian Open because again, I've been up for several hours watching this. I know that you've had the opportunity to watch some matches as well. It's been an amazing tournament. Hopefully, you get to enjoy some more of it. And we thank you so much for taking some time out of your very busy day, doing all sorts of things to chat with us a little bit about tennis and your life on and off the court. And oh, you know what? Someone just told me to keep talking. That is so great because I love to talk, and I don't think it's very rare that someone tells me to keep talking. But while we are talking, actually, I'm curious in terms of the Australian Open, because we just had so much to talk about before. What are some of the players that you're looking forward to watching, or maybe some of the matches you're looking forward to watching? Maybe specifically Iga Swiatek against Helena Ostapenko. I promise I'm that matchup that we should be getting because
I
at
think
US
playing
Open
against each
last year, she
other.
beat her.
Are they
Yeah.
playing against each other? I didn't see the draw. Is it third round, fourth round? When are they?
It'll be fourth round. So I think
Okay.
Iga just needs to win one more, and Ostapenko needs to win one more, and then
Yes.
she's 4-0 against Iga, and she did something that almost no one has ever done at a Grand Slam, which is come back from a set down against Iga. I think that should be a very fun match if we get it.
Yes, and you see, this is the fun thing about tennis. Someone can be so dominant, but against certain players, it's super hard to play against because the games just don't suit well. So, and of course, Ostapenko being so aggressive, and Iga sometimes needed a little more time to prepare for the shot. So probably she finds it a little bit harder to play against her. But yeah, I would love to watch that match. Hopefully, they schedule them for night sessions so I can see some.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, maybe not for me, but hopefully for the rest of the world. No, do you feel like head to head is one of the most important things in tennis? I've always been curious about that because sometimes you'll get, two players who, someone beats, the other person 3 times, like 6 years ago in juniors or something like that. And then they've taken such different paths. We saw it with Blinkova and Rybakina today. What is that? Is that like the most important thing in tennis, would you say? What sort of factor does that play?
You know what? This is really, really interesting question. And I've been dying to actually talk about this because this head-to-head thing, it's what I said before. Sometimes the game style of a certain player doesn't suit yours, and it's super hard to play. Like the player might even be in a bad form and they still beat you because of the game style that doesn't match yours, and somehow they prevail. But that's one point. But another thing is what you mentioned before, like Ostapenko beat Iga, and Iga was the first time set up. This is one of the things that we never ever think about on court. Like we never think about, oh, this player has a great three-set match record, or this player after winning first set they never lose a match. Like you never ever.
I hate when they mention that. How many? Everyone wins after they win the first set all the time. That's the most worthless stat.
No, so when they talk about these statistics, when I listen to it, I'm like, you know what? We never ever think about this. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I know that they are trying to, with the technology, they're also improving where they now do statistics and where the player's favorite serve, is it wide, is it T? So this can help a little bit to prepare to see where it's the favorite shot or the most comfortable shot. This, yes, but talking about 3-set match records, winning a tiebreaker, not winning tiebreaker really makes no difference.
I completely agree. We do have to get out of there, but now I have to ask you, was there a player that you were just better than, but for some reason you just couldn't beat? Were there any of those head-to-heads in your career that you were just like, I can't solve this person?
I mean, I don't know if I was better or not, but I really disliked playing Pliskova. For me, it was super hard to read her game. Super tall, really good serve, and she would get amazing angles that for me was super hard to read. But then there were other players that I just loved playing against, even though they are amazing top players.
That is what makes tennis such a great sport. And we were so honored to hear some of your thoughts about the game, talk about this year's Australian Open, your work off the court, Novak Djokovic. It was a great chat, and hope to do it again. But yeah, Anna, thank you so much for taking some time out of your very busy schedule. We mentioned all the things you're always doing. So thank you very much. And it was a pleasure chatting.
My pleasure too. Have a nice day and enjoy the rest of the Australian Open.
Yeah, you as well. I definitely will. And signing off for the ES Fancast with Ana Ivanovic, I'm Kenny Ducey. We'll see you next time.